Hi guys, my name's Sierra and I'm here to talk to you about something a little different today. I'm going to be participating in a mental illness read-along, which was created by Read-A-Thon. I'll link her channel and her original video about this below. I think it's a great, fantastic idea. It is a week-long read-a-thon to read books dealing with mental illness. And it's to kind of clear up the mental illness stigma that society seems to have, that these people who have mental illness don't fit in, or they're outsiders, or they can't function in a normal society. It's reading books dealing with mental illness to clear that stigma. I love reading these books because if it's the character's point of view that has the mental illness, you really get to see and feel what these people are feeling. If you yourself don't have the mental illness that they do, or somebody you know is suffering from it, you can really get on another level with reading a book about mental illness. You can really connect and see what that's like. So what I'm going to be doing today is sharing some books that I think would be fantastic for this read-along. Some of these I've read, so I'm going to split it into two sections. Ones I've read and ones I want to read, and I'm going to focus on the ones I want to read for this read-a-thon, because I've wanted to read these books for a long time, and I've never gotten around to. I've tried a couple times, I picked them up, put them back down. Don't really know why, but I'm so excited to get to read these and to have a reason to read these. So let me give you some information about the read-along first. So it will last from Monday, February 16th through Sunday, February 22nd, and there is a Goodreads page and a Twitter account for this read-along, and I'll link those down below as well. And there's a couple different people hosting sprints on Twitter, and if I can find those links, I'll put them down below too. But they are also using a hashtag mentalong, which I think is fantastic. So let's get started into my book suggestions that would be perfect for this. The first section I'm going to do is books I have read, and I do own all of these, most of these. I do own most of these, but I don't have a lot of them with me because I let my two sisters borrow them. So a lot of them are with them, so I don't have them with me. But books about mental illness are by far my favorite type of book to read. I love reading about it. I love hearing different people's point of view on the same topic. And I think it's such a great way to connect with other characters and live a life that you don't live yourself. I think it's a great thing. And it's also very cathartic to people who do suffer from that mental illness to read about it, and maybe the book will show them something that they've been failing to see themselves. So it's really good in that sense as well. So the first book I picked out was Cut by Patricia McCormick, and this is a great book. It deals with self-harm, and it takes place in a mental health hospital. And it's about a teenage girl who self-harms, and it's just a fantastic book. It's really short. The copy I have is falling apart because I've read it so many times. I don't even know where it is. I know my sisters don't have that, but I have no idea where it is. But it's got to be like 130 pages, 150, way less than 200. It's super quick. You can probably read it in like an hour or two. So it's perfect for like a good read-a-thon book. So the next book is 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. If you don't know about this book, it deals with a girl who commits suicide, and then she records 13 tapes and sends them out to people about why she did it. The next book is called Identical by Ellen Hopkins. I don't know if you can see it because the cover's super shiny and light and all that stuff. This book is fantastic. If you've never read an Ellen Hopkins book, they're written in verse, so it looks intimidating because it's really thick, but it's super quick to read. And this is about two twin sisters who are very different from each other. I'm not going to go into it more than that, but fantastic book about mental illness in general. This book is great. I also have another Ellen Hopkins book on my list that I've read, and that is Impulse, and this takes place in a mental health hospital as well, and it follows, I think, 4 different perspectives, or maybe 3, about people in the hospital, and so you get a couple different character point of views on the same situations, and it's another one that's written in verse, so it's super quick to read, but it's a great book. So the next book I have on my list is Perfect by Natasha. And again, this is another one that's super short. It'd be super quick to read. And this is in my top 5 favorite books of all time, if not in the top 2. This book is amazing. I've read it so many times. It's about a girl named Isabella, and she has an eating disorder, and she goes to this like outpatient therapy group where she meets another girl from her school there that's super popular, and they kind of become like friends and partners in crime. This book is so good. It was the first book that I read, really, or remember reading about somebody with an eating disorder or a mental illness in general, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I could read this over and over and over again, and I'm probably going to read this for the Read-A-Thon, even though I've already read it before, because I just love it so much. The next book I have is called Kim Empty Inside, and I read it within the last year, and it's also about a girl with an eating disorder who is a gymnast. So it goes hand in hand with how those 2 things do play in hand. It's a really great book. It's another one. It's super short. It doesn't have an author. It's part of that whole Beatrix Sparks doctor controversy. Were these books really written by people, or were they all written by Beatrix Sparks? There's tons of books, and let me tell you, I love all of them except one of them. That's for a different day. There's also another one of those books on my list, and it's called Letting Anna Go, and it is about a girl with anorexia, and it is fantastic. It's so great. I love it so much. So the next book I have is called Skin Game by Caroline Kettlewell, and this is a memoir, so it is a true story, and it is about a girl who gets so overwhelmed with her feelings and dealing with things and feeling uncomfortable that she starts self-harming in 5th grade and continues all throughout her schooling years up until her about mid-20s. And this is a great little memoir that deals with self-harm from a true point of view of somebody it actually happened to, writing about their life and how they dealt with it from 5th grade onward, and what the interactions with family and friends and loved ones in general were. And it's such a good book. I really suggest this one. And then I have Winter Girls by Lori Hulse Anderson, which is about 2 girls that have eating disorders, and one ends up dying and the other one is left, and they're kind of each other's only friends, so the one ends up now with no friends and dealing with her eating disorder. So it's a really good book. I really like the way it's written, and the cover is gorgeous. And the last book on my suggestions of books that I have read wouldn't be thought of when it's like, what about a book with mental illness in it? I don't think anyone would really say this, but Misery by Stephen King. Now, this is my favorite Stephen King book. If you've never read it, it is about an author who gets into a car accident and wakes up in the home of his #1 fan, and his legs are broken and she keeps him hostage, and it's all really strange and great book, fantastic book. But Annie, who is the girl that takes him hostage, is manic depressive, so she has really high manias and then really low depressions. And I think this is interesting because it takes a different point of view, because it's not written in her point of view, it's written in his point of view. So you get to see how he deals with living with somebody that has a mental illness that isn't taking care of it, and she is his sole provider, and like he relies on her for everything because he can't walk. So I think it's really great in that aspect. Now, the next section of books I have is books that I want to read. So either I have them or they're just in my general to read list on BookReads, my to read shelf on Goodreads. And these books all sound amazing, but I can't vouch 100% for them because I have not read them. So these are the books I'm going to try to be reading throughout the Read-A-Thon. So the first book I have is Sybil by Flora Retta Schreiber. And this is a super old book, and it is about somebody who has multiple personality disorder, and she has 16 different personalities. And I've wanted to read this book for so long. There's so many like adaptations for movies and TV shows and all sorts of things, so I think this book is going to be fantastic, and this is my number one on my TBR for this Read-A-Thon, so I'm really excited to read this. The next book on my TBR is It's Kind of a Funny Story by Ned Vizzini, and this takes place in a mental health hospital after a boy named Craig checks in to the mental health hospital because he stops eating and sleeping and he nearly kills himself. And I bought this book after I saw the trailer for the movie because it looked interesting. I still haven't seen the movie because I really do want to read the book first. I picked this book up to read it a couple times, but I've always got distracted with something else. So this is my second project after I finish Sybil, so I'm really excited to read this as well. The third one, which I'm probably not going to read for the Read-A-Thon, but I wanted to include it because it is a sequel to one of the books I did read. It says it's a sequel, but I'm not sure how exact of a sequel it is. It might just be a companion novel, and that is Perfect by Ellen Hopkins. It is the second book to Impulse, which was a story about the kids in the mental health hospital with the different point of views. And this is another one that sounds like it's in different point of views, but I'm not sure if it follows the same kids. If it does, then that would make sense as why it's called Impulse number 2. But I do really want to read it. I haven't heard too much about it, so I'll probably eventually pick it up through like Book Outlet or Thrift Books or something. The fourth book that I want to read is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and my sister actually read it, and she doesn't really like reading, so the fact that she read it says a lot. And I own it. I have a copy of it somewhere. It doesn't seem too fairly long, and it just seems. I love the movie. The movie was fantastic, so I really want to read the book. And this is another book where it just overall takes place in a mental health facility and deals with a whole bunch of different people with a bunch of different mental illnesses. The next book has been on my TBR forever, and I still do not own it. And that is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I don't know why I refuse to buy this book when I so desperately want to read it. I think it's because everywhere it's like $12. And when you get used to buying all your books at Goodwill, paying $12 for a book seems insane. But it is, anytime you find a list of like top 10 books about mental illness, I've never seen a list like that where The Bell Jar is not in that list. So I feel like that deserved to be in this video. The next one is called Suicide Notes by Michael Thomas Ford, and this is a book that deals with depression and suicide attempt because a boy wakes up and he finds himself in the hospital, and I don't know too much about it, but I know I read the synopsis of it a while ago and it sounded really good, and I'd like to see what happens. Again, this is what I don't own, so I don't know if I'll be able to do it for the Read-A-Thon, but it does sound really good. The next one is called I Never Promised You a Rose Garden by Joanne Greenberg, and it deals with a woman who has schizophrenia and the relationship she has with her psychiatrist and everything that happens with that. And it sounds so good. And I think it's older, maybe from the 70s or 80s, maybe earlier than that. But it sounds so interesting, and I don't find a lot of books about schizophrenia. So I think, and I don't know a lot about it, so I think it'd be really interesting to read about it. The next book I have is Wasted by Mara Hornbacher, and this is another memoir that I've tried to read it a couple times. I think I got maybe halfway through and I picked up another book. I don't remember why, but this is also a memoir about a girl who has anorexia and bulimia. So I read Skin Game by Carolyn Kettlewell, and then I saw this in the related, and I really, since I read so many other books that were fiction about eating disorders, I really wanted to pick up a memoir about eating disorders as well, so I can read it and see how accurate the books were, the fiction books. So hopefully I'll read this for the Read-A-Thon as well. And then the last book I have is called I Wore the Ocean in the Shape of a Girl by Kelly Groom. And this is another memoir that it's about a girl who is an alcoholic at 15 years old. So there is some sort of mental illness that she's dealing with that causes her to do that. So I really would like to figure out what it is and see what happens. There's tons of stuff that goes on in her life, so it sounds super interesting. So I really hope to read this for the Read-A-Thon as well.